How you doing? I don't know about qualified with the 7 sisters. I got married at 12 just to get away from them. If you got sisters, you know I'm telling the truth. And but it doesn't stop there. Then I got 3 daughters, 5 granddaughters. Yeah, a mother that won't die. I'm telling you the truth. She texted me this morning already and told me, she said, it's you got to be careful when you travel because you can get fat. You're watching your diet. And I said, go away. I came over here to get away from all of this. But Pastor Beth, it's a real honour to be here, and I didn't realise that I have usurped the greatest preacher in town to do the job. So let's see how we go. And now if you're visiting today, and Mother's Day is a day when people visit, I want to just spend about 2 minutes talking so you get acclimatised to the Australian accent. And I'll speak a little slower. Sometimes people ask me after, you didn't sound Australian. I said, I can if you want to. But for your sake and not having to need subtitles, we will try and speak a little slower, if that's okay. Pastor Beth, I want to assume that our church auditorium today is a womb. Now, just relax. I'm not going to go too far down this track. I've already said, I think I said to Alan this morning, I have never been so nervous to preach as you. See, normally you can get up here. I could preach on the tabernacle of Moses, and only Pastor Beth and one other Bible boffin knows whether I'm telling the truth. But everybody I'm talking to has a mother, so you're all experts on the subject. And so that I'm going to have to be very, very careful with it. But so I want to assume that our church, and by the church folk, you do understand, I'm not talking about the building, not the chairs, I'm talking about it's a womb. It's where life is started. And so we're going to say some things today, and it's my prayer that life would start out of some of the things that we talk about today. And if you'll allow me, with the corny metaphor, that you'll get pregnant with the truth of God's word. And as we've seen already with Emily today, where when you're pregnant, you eventually burst forth, and there will be a child coming as a result of this. Now, that I'm an expert on. I've been there 4 times, and I will introduce my family to you in just a moment. But I've been there, and I tell you what, for all the men who are here, if you've not been to that room, I don't know how you're looking forward to it, but when I went there, I just wished I was born in the 1920s when they didn't let men go there. That is the absolute truth, I'm telling you now. And but I want to... David went down to a brook. I'm using this story because if you're not normally in church, you possibly will know this story. It would be remiss of a preacher to stand up here and say you know the story, because there's so many people these days with Bible things that don't. But when we talk about David and Goliath, most people at least have a recollection. I hear it, sports reporters use it when teams play. They talk about a David and Goliath. Whenever you're fighting the city, they talk about a David and Goliath. So if you didn't know where it comes from the Bible. But when David went down to take out Goliath, it says he went to a brook. And I'm going to get you to help me here. He found something in the brook. What did he find? A gentleman here said stones, okay? A little more information. How many? 5. All right, a little more information. What type of stones were they? The Bible's very deliberate. It tells us they were smooth stones. Now look at me. Here's your takeaway. They weren't cutting edge. You've been trying to get successful with cutting edge? Well, it might be time to find yourself some smooth stones to get through family, to get through marriage. And I'm not suggesting that I'm an expert on these. I've been married for 44 years so far. And Susie is a lucky woman. I can tell you that much right now. And I'm brave enough to say that this far from home. But we've got 4 kids. Let's put, Alan, let's put my kids up here. Here's my 4 kids. Now, The big guy on your left is Andy. He's 29 on his next birthday. And just ladies, so I can impress you, he was £9.10. All right. Then the next young lady, Rachel, who I will introduce to you as we go through, she is 34 2 days ago. And she was £10.4, which is why there's 5 years between her and Andy, because we had finished. We shut the shop after £10.4. We said, now all the men are going, how does this guy know their weights? I even know their birthdays, gentlemen. I am a party trick. They invite me to Tupperware parties. So that's why we stopped. So we say to Andy, now I'm giving him a minute because he's about to disappear off the screen and he will not be seen again because it's Mother's Day. And we're going to talk about the ladies today. But I talk to him often. I say, buddy, you weren't an accident, but you were a surprise. And I look, Pastor Beth, I still look at him now because when you've had your last child, you plan your life. And then he totally destroyed it. And by coming, and even now, 29 years later, I look at him and I think, dear me, God always knew you would figure in the plan of the universe, even though we didn't have a clue. Friend, God's got things you haven't even thought about yet that are a part of your future. And I want to encourage you to put your faith in God and let him. You'll have surprises, you'll have some disappointments. Look at me, I'm 62. And if I was 19, you'd accuse me of being idealistic. I'm 62. And so I do have had a trial or two. You can't get a free ticket this long. But I will tell you, I think it was David that said I was young and now I'm older. I have never seen God's people forsaken. God is good. I'm here to tell you that. All right. Okay, Nick, put him back up, Alan. Now the next, then there's Rebecca. She's our oldest. She's 40. And on September the 7th this year. And she's been married a good while. And then the last girl is our brainiac. We think she's adopted. But her name is Renee. So we have Rachel, Rebecca, and Renee, and she's a high school teacher. Now, Renee was £9.10, same as Andy, and Rebecca was our first. She was £9.7.5. And so £9.7.5 was the start, £9.10, £10.4. That's why we stopped. We said, this is only going one way, and it's not looking good. And that's it. I want to share, if I had a title, and I'm not too big on titles, and now it's Mother's Day, so we understand you've got to go home for lunch. I'm a little nervous, and you should be, because there's not a clock on the back telling me when to finish. So if the guys want to put one up, that will help. I got 7 sisters. I haven't got to talk much, so I don't know when to stop. So I became professional talker just to get a turn. So you're more than welcome to put a clock on the back so I know when to finish. And you, if you're visiting, have permission to look around anytime you like to see how long till I finish. Is that okay? Pastor Beth, before I finish though, I want to ask people if they're connected to Jesus. I've got to be quick on this. But look, Jack Daniels, and I don't even like mentioning the brand, but he's not doing it for you. Nor's Dr. Phil, Jim Beam, Oprah, or anyone else. You were made in the image and the likeness of God. All right, I have a Harley Davidson. I don't take it to Yamaha when it needs a service. I take it to who created it. And they go, oh, and they plug it up. And I'm soon on my way and everything's going fantastic. You were made in the image of God. And so today I'd like to ask Pastor Beth, before I hand back to you, if you'd like to be connected to God. I won't ask you to do anything but perhaps stay in your seat. I'll stay up here. I'll ask you perhaps while heads are bowed to raise a hand. If I see it, I'll say put it down and I will include you in a prayer, believing that you sincerely are saying, God, I need a new start. I need to be forgiven. I need to be rescued. And now, perhaps you don't look like you need rescuing, but you put your head on your pillow at night and you know. Now, I'm not sure what you think about that, but I will simply ask and give you the opportunity before I hand back and pray a prayer and ask God and all of his love to be good to you. Now, if I had a title for this message, it would be called this. It's Things I've Learned from My Daughters. They say you don't become a grumpy old person. You just get unfiltered as you get older. But I've learned that you have to make a decision somewhere along the line that the future is half your age. So you need to start to honour them. You need to start to look for what they can offer you. The last time I got pulled over at a traffic stop, the person was young enough to be one of my grandchildren. The last time the doctor said, could you just slip your trousers off? I'm thinking you are too young to be seeing what you're about to see. So I am not waiting to grow into where I will let the next generation. I'm like a relay runner. I am deliberately holding the baton out, wanting to find a hand. You know, I was talking to Nate this morning, and I'm telling you, if you ever become the pastor of this church, a church, I'll happily come and call you pastor. I'm at an age now where I have myriads of people that have one time, perhaps not myriads, that was an embellishment, but a lot of people who have called me their hero. But I am clearly now looking at them and telling them, you are now mine. And so to that end, I want to talk to you about things I've learned from my daughters. And I've got 3 of them, and so we'll see how we go. Can we put them up? Again, Alan and Andy's done a disappearing act. All right, we'll bring him out on Father's Day. He's worth a lesson all on his own. Let me talk to you about Rebecca. She's the one in the middle in black. Now, I do have photos of each of them individually because I asked them to send them to me. But if I showed you the ones they sent me, I decided on this one because they tried to take the mickey out of me, as we'd say in Australia, and make a fool of me. So I went with this one. This is Rebecca. She is 40 years of age in this next birthday, September 7th. This is what she's taught me. She's taught me that time flies. Let me tell you how that worked. I brought her home in a Triumph Herald convertible. It's an ugly little British car. And I remember driving her home and looking over the back seat in the bassinet. And now of course, you have child restraints and social workers. Back then, you just had like an open casket. And here she is. I live in a place where it's 75 degrees in the middle of the day in winter. So I'm driving her home in September, which is spring for us. And so it's like probably, 80 degrees, and she's just staring at the sun out of an open casket. There are no seat belts. It's a convertible. There is no roof. I hit the brakes and she landed in the glove compartment. But I remember driving her home and looking over my shoulder and saying, "You're lucky." Now, she didn't answer me, but I know she wanted to. She wanted to say, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm your dad." You could have been born to the guy next door, and he's a twit, but you've got me. And I thought how lucky she is that she's got me. I remember bringing her along to service about 3 or 4 weeks later with her mother, Susie, my wife, and we were on stage. Now, I'm the pastor as well as the father in this particular case, so I'm delivering the dedication message. You're familiar with it. We bring him as Jesus was brought by his parents to the temple, and Anna the prophet turned up, and and all the regalia. And so we brought her there, and I'm delivering the message, and I'm standing back here as the father. I'm laying hands on myself, believing in God to be good. She's there, and I dedicated her to the Lord. 20 years later, she stood on a platform, and I put a hand in the hand of a man, and I dedicated her marriage to the Lord. And I thought, where the heck did that 20 years go? And 6 weeks ago, I put her on the stage again with that same husband, and I dedicated their ministry to the Lord and handed our church over to them. And they are now my pastors. Listen, if you got something good you want to do with your life, today would be a really good time to start. Because time flies. I'm going to give my heart to Jesus, mate, when I get old. Hope you make it home. I heard a lady on the stage at my own church one time give her testimony of how she came to Christ. She was in her 20s and, going places fast. And her mother was a believing person, and Mama just kept praying. Mama, just keep your praying going on. And Mama kept praying for her. She said, Mum, when I'm old. And she jetted off on a holiday to somewhere, what's it called, Phuket, to Thailand. She booked into her hotel and she rented one of those canoes with the outrigger. You can find her on Google because she spent 5 days, I think, in the South China Sea, in the sun, in a bikini. She told her mother, I'm too young. She said, I got too much to do. Well, she ended up very old out there after 5 days in the sun with nothing to do. Today's a good time to get a plan going. Start saving for a home. Finish a university degree. Take your boy down to the lake with a fishing pole. Today's a good time to do it. Oh, I'm telling you, this is a womb here. We're going to see things birthed out here. Listen, this isn't a parenting course, but I'm still going to give it to you. I worked out that your kids live under here for about 12 years. Then they live under here, well, nowadays till they're about 50, but let's stick with the metaphor. They live under here for about 20. They live out there for about 65. I know it's Mother's Day, but let me just when my son turned 14, I was a golfer. Not good, played off 16, and good social golfer. But I couldn't get my son to come. So I bought a boat. I had a friend of mine said, I didn't know you liked boats. I said, I don't. I like Andy. And I'd like you not to tell him I don't like boats. He still doesn't know, he's 29. He asked me just a couple of months ago, hey Dad, we should buy a new boat. He said, let's go halves. You pay for it, I'll use it. But he's been out of the house for over 10 years. I'm back playing golf and it's fantastic. But listen, I worked it out. Time flies. I remember being in that room when she was born. Oh, do you remember that? How could you forget it? I mean, I remember where I was when Elvis died and when Beck was born. I remember standing up here. That's where Susie's head is. I'm talking to her. And then apparently there was a head down there. And the doctor said, do you want to come have a look? I said, no, I do not. He said, most fathers want to have a look. I said, well, this one does not. Pretty soon, crowbars, vacuum cleaners, towing trucks. She's at 9 pound 7 are on the table. And then they pick her up and say, would you like to hold her? I said, I wouldn't like to do that either. He said, we always like to give the father our first hold. I said, well, I'd like you to take her out and hose her, mate. He said, well, we always like to let Dad hold her first in case we, so he knows we don't bring the wrong one back. I don't care which one you bring back, as long as you've hosed it and shammied it. And just a few weeks ago, I had that same woman. She's done a university and trained as a nurse and worked, on the wards for years. She's now got 3 children of her own. Her oldest 15-year-old is now off working on Saturday mornings. It can't happen, but it has. So if you've got a dream, I'd say today is a good time to start. If you're waiting to become old or have nothing to do, or when you've got time to connect with God, your maker, I want to encourage you. Today's a good time to open your heart and say yes to Jesus. It's what my daughter's taught me. My second daughter, let's put the girls up again and I'll show you my next daughter. This is Renee. We're waiting, that's me. On your right, that's Renee. Renee is on her next birthday. She was born in 86, so that would make her... No, I'm actually truly asking. I'm no good at math. But she was born on July the 14th. She was 9 pound 10. And so on her next birthday, she's going to be about 30 something. And it's just marvellous. She has 2 kids. They're both IVF. Do we have IVF here? I think that's a laboratory type of thing. It's a bit like, going to Domino's and ordering it yourself. And so you get it exactly how you like it. And but Renee, I'll tell you what Renee has taught me. Renee has taught me that spirit does not have age. I want you to think this. See, your body has birthdays, but your spirit does not. I watched an Animal Planet show once on the crocodile. And apparently, if you see a 15-foot crocodile next to a 6-foot crocodile, you would be wrong to assume that the 15-foot crocodile is the older of the two, because they grow to the limit of their opportunity. It would be good if we grew to the limit of our opportunity. But I have to confess that I have not grown to the limit of my opportunity, that I am smaller than the opportunities have allowed that I could be. I remember one time, Pastor Beth, you've had them, you probably don't have any of these people in Martinsburg, but I had a fellow come to my church one day, and he waited around afterwards till everyone else had gone. And it was sort of just me and, like the deacons, as we used to call them, just picking up the cigarette butts from the church members at the front door. And so he came to me and I said, "G'day, mate." That's how you say hello in Australia. And he said, "G'day." And I said, "I don't think I've met you before." And he went, "No, but I have a ministry." I thought, "Okay, tell me, what's your ministry?" He said, "I have a ministry to single, depressed young women under 25. And he said, "All right, I don't think there's anyone living in your city like this." But so I'm looking at him and I just went like this. And I'm sure Pastor Kevin would do the same. I just said, "Buddy, look me in the eye here. You will never practice that ministry in this church. Am I clear?" And he was compliant. He said, "Oh, yes, Pastor." And I walked him off the property because I wanted to be sure he'd gone. And when I got to the parking lot, you guessed it, guess what he was driving? He had an old ambulance. I think it was his mobile clinic. And so I said, I was very keen to see him leave the property. So he got to his car and then dramatically went, "Would you pray for me before I leave?" And I said, "If it'll make you leave." I went to put my hand up and he wasn't there because he dropped to his knees dramatically onto the asphalt, or the bitumen as we call it. And he's there leaning back, waiting for me to pray for him. I did pray a prayer, "Dear Lord, I pray that this man would leave in Jesus' name." But when I opened my eyes, I saw a 12-year-old girl who I put on the screen just a minute ago. Her name was Renee, 12 years old. And she's going, and I thought, she knows. She's not old enough to know. She hasn't met enough people to know. And on that day, I realized that it is not years on the planet that make you wise, because your spirit doesn't have birthdays. I meet a lot of Christians, they say, "Well, I've been a Christian 50 years. I spend an hour with them, I realize they've been a Christian 1 year, repeated 50 times. But here's a young lady. We took her to Rome one time and she decided she wanted to be a history teacher. So now she majors in history and English and teaches high school students. She married a man because you tend to attract what you shoot for. Married a man who, with a degree in commerce, works for our federal government. They serve on the eldership of the church they attend. And she went to the pastor just recently to tell him there were some deficiencies in the children's ministry. And now she's the children's pastor. So be careful what you come to complain about. I only had one thing for each of my children, And again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to impregnate. This is a womb. I want someone to realize today that time's getting away from you, that it's time to pick up the phone and ring that estranged son. It's time to get back to that study. You know it's your calling. It's time. The Bible says that you should study to show yourself approved. Do you remember another 12-year-old? Let's put it up. Luke chapter 2. Jesus is at a festival with his mum and dad. After the festival, they take off home. And the Bible says they think he's with his cousins. So they don't look for him. 3 days into the thing, they realize he's not here. So they go back and they search him. 3 days later, they find him in the temple. He's 12. And this is what it says. 3 days later, they finally discovered him in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking questions. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. Now, I wanted to limit just to one thing for each of these girls to throw into this womb this morning. But I want to say just one other thing that dovetails with this about my daughter Renee. A person with a conviction is never at the mercy of a fool with an opinion. If all of your ideologies come from CNN or Fox, you fit the latter category. And I've sat in my office and heard people many, many times about, I said, if you're here to tell me you got your truth from the 6 o'clock news, you're a big imbecile than you look. Which is probably why I'm no longer pastoring a church. I think Gabriel said to God, or God said to Gabriel, can we get him another job? Maybe he visits other churches just once, you know. Listen, if you want to argue with my daughter Renee, read a book, because she read 2. Promise you. My third daughter is so totally different. Let's put these girls up again. I'll introduce you to what we call our wild child. On the left, that's Rachel. She will be 34. Correction. She was 34 this week on the 12th of May. I was 62 on the 10th of May. I did ride over more than one speed bump on the 10th of May when her mother was pregnant, but she hung on. Said, I will share my birthday with no one. She waited 2 more days and she's got a day all to herself. And that's pretty well how she's lived. Pastor Beth, I don't know what your theology is on this. I don't know what mine is, to be honest. But yeah, she's got some tattoos. She's got some piercings. She told me, Dad, body piercing saved our life. Yeah, I said, I'm not sure where that one's going. Hard to argue. Now, if you're a teenager, that's no excuse. All right? I said, get a tattoo anytime you don't want to be in the will. Yeah, that's how smart she was. All right. But both the older sisters are university trained. And so Rachel, can I tell you about her final year in high school? Susie said to me, should we let her leave and get a job? She couldn't read too good. She does not mind me telling you this. She's savvy, street smart, you know, but this is like February. Our school year runs February, you know, to early December. So in February, Susie says, do you think we should let her leave and get a job? Because it was costing us like $5,000 back in those days for the tuition. And I said, no, I don't want her to leave. And Susie said, why not? She's not coping. I said, because I don't want her in the workforce with 25-year-old blokes. I know them. Get me back on Father's Day. I am an expert. Susie said, well, what are we going to do? I said, I don't care. She can just have a cruisy year. Susie said, what if she has a meltdown? I said, well, I'll tell her. So about a week later, she had a meltdown, told us all she was dumb and she didn't deserve to go to school. I said, Rach, you want to go to the prom, don't you? Which is at the end of the year. She said, yes. You like hanging with your friends, don't you? Yes. Well, that's it. She said, what do you mean that's it? I said, that's it. What about homework? Don't do it. Listen, school gets you educated, but God made you intelligent. And they're different. I said to this daughter, I said, listen, I got educated in my 20s. School didn't fit me. And I'm not giving license to any rebellious kid here. You've got to have a talk with your own parents about this, all right? But I'd watched this kid struggle through school. And so I just said, look, I just want to keep her with her peer group. It's going to cost me about $5,000 for that. I know parents have spent a whole lot more trying to get the kids out of stuff. So she got a job in a pet store. And then she got a job in a phone shop selling prepaid phone plans. And this is what happened. She's serving one day, she's serving a lady. Hello, can I help you? And about 10 feet down the counter, another customer is abusing one of her colleagues, like tearing their head off. This woman says to my daughter Rachel, who's now about 22, she says, I bet you're glad you've got me. To which she answered, do you know my colleague, he just wants to make that person happy, so I'm sure he'll do what he can to help. And the woman went like this, you have got to come and work for me. I cannot train that attitude. Listen to me, attitude, Rachel taught me that attitude trumps aptitude. There's a lot of MBAs can't get a job in a parking lot, friend. Rachel come home and told she's got 2 university-trained sisters. She's already feeling the weight and the pressure of being the kid that works at the phone store. So she come home so excited. You'll never guess what happened. She told us the story and we rejoiced with her and then sweated because there was no email turned up the next day or the next day. So it just became a good day at work after 4 weeks. But after 6 weeks, an email turned up. And this is what it said, in essence. I was in your store 6 weeks ago. I don't know if you remember me, but I said you'd be good to work on our team. I've talked to my boss. She'd like you to come for an interview. Long story short, she went from 35 grand, which is not a lot in Australia, because our dollar's about 25 cents of yours, to 60 grand. And now she's on about 95 grand. She's now in HR for a government college. Still can't read, but apparently Google helps. And they love her. I'm here to tell you, look, if I had to pick one other thing for Rachel, it's this, that you got to be a little bit naughty. Nice naughty, but naughty, you know? Before I was a Christian, I was wicked and boring. Now I'm not wicked. Yeah. Now give that a miss. You're supposed to get a life when you give your heart to Jesus. I often see drunk people acting up and I say, now you know why I don't drink. Can you imagine what I'd do if I drank? Because I'm like that sober. I'm going to ask you if you'd like to connect to Jesus in just a moment. They're my 3 daughters. I'm going to just throw 2 bonuses in. I want you to put up a picture of my wife. This is my wife, Susie, because she's taught me something as well. I met Susie when I was 13 years of age. She was nearly 16, so she is a cougar. She's 64 years of age as you're looking at that photo. But Pastor Beth, I don't know if you and Pastor Kevin had this, you probably didn't, but we didn't like each other when we first got married. I've got friends, and don't put your hand up if it's still happening. But 44 years ago, I woke up about the 6th morning and Susie found me praying. I was repenting for making the mistake of my life, for marrying the wrong person. And the prayer went something like, God, if a bus does hit her, I know she's going to heaven. And I'll marry properly the next time. Trouble is, she wasn't in the bed to hear me pray because she was in the other corner. Dear God, kill him. Dear God, kill him. I don't care where he goes. And I know that that's not your marriage, but it was ours. One of the points of contention for me, Pastor Beth, is if it was Father's Day, she just needed to grow a set. You get some backbone, woman. See, I'm from a leadership family. My dad was a pastor. I got 7 sisters. Hello. It's Margaret Thatcher by 7. And, it was like, and then I marry this compliant, So we go to a restaurant, she orders chicken, white meat, fantastic. I don't know what happens in the kitchen, but they bring out fish. And she goes, I like fish. I said, get out. And I'm getting mad. I would have jumped the counter. You wanted chicken? She said, yeah, but I like fish. Yeah, but you didn't order fish. Get a backbone. Get what you want. And it annoyed me. Till one day, I came home as a young youth pastor. When I got inside, she said, Lenny came to visit me today. Lenny's a newly converted boy in our youth group that was a ladies' guy. She said, Lenny came to visit me today. I said, oh, how'd that go? He said he knocked on the door, the security door. And I came and I said, oh, g'day, Lenny, how you going? And he said, yeah, good, is Steve home? She said, no, he's not home. This is chicken and fish lady. And then there's awkward silence because he's supposed to say the next thing, like, I'll come back. But what he said was, are you going to invite me in? And chicken and fish lady said, Lenny, not even opening the door, mate. Steve's not home. Come back later, and shut the door in his face. And I learned something about chicken and fish lady that day. That not every fight's a fight worth having. We've got a lot of pugnacious people, road rage and people they've never met before. They'll chase them for 50 miles down the interstate, get home an hour late to have dinner with their family, to hassle someone they've never met before that did not get out of bed that morning to hassle them. My wife taught me there are things worth fighting for. The way we raised our kids was one of them. There'll be a lot of people today preach on Mother's Day from Proverbs 31. It's called The Virtuous Woman. And it starts off, verse 1 says that these are the lessons King Lemuel learned as taught by his mum. Well, I tell you, my wife taught me, look, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for everything. But work out what you're going to stand for. I'm making a stand for God. I'm making a stand for righteousness. I'm making a stand for Jesus. And there's one more woman I'd like to introduce. I want you to put her up. You'll know she's not a daughter of mine. Keep her up. Just keep her up there. This is my mother. She's 95 years of age. When I was 13 years of age, I walked into the house and I said this, Mum, where's Dad these days? She was 46. She had 11 of her 12 children still living at home. She was looking out the window and did not turn around to face me. But it is to this day the most negative thing I've ever heard her say about my father. And she said, looking out the window to a 13-year-old boy, I don't think he loves us anymore. As an adult now, I'll appreciate she has probably had tears coming down her face, and that's why she didn't turn around. I said, oh, and went back outside because I was next up to bat. Because I'm 13. But friend, I want to tell you, this woman raised 5 sons that are all serving their God call. And you know what she taught me? She taught me that the church is the best place to have your worst day. See, my daddy was the pastor of the church before he ran off with the woman in the church. So my mum lost her status, lost her friends, lost her base, lost everything. Would have been so easy to crawl into a hole. But she found herself a church. And she said, I'll tell you, we're going to be in church. I remember one time, Pastor Beth, I didn't want to go. I don't know how old I was, but I didn't want to go. So I didn't look for my shoes and told her I couldn't find them. She was a very stickler for being tidy. And so I said, I can't find my shoes, Mum, so, I can't go in flip-flops. I'm going to have to stay home. She said, where are they? Well, I could only find one of them, I said. So she said, come here. And she's 4'8". She sat me, she's good with the jug cord. She sat me down on a chair, got out the first aid box, put a big bandage on the foot without the shoe, and said, just limp. She said, but I'm telling you now, boy, you are not staying home. My oldest brother runs a building company, serving his God call. My next brother pastors churches. The next boy's me. The next boy's a police inspector. And the next boy runs the IT for a chain of stores you would know if I told you in our country, serving the God call. I want to tell you this. The church is the best place for you to have your worst day.